what I think is dangerous is when the state can in any way really influence a story. And we've seen it time and time again recently with fake news. And that's a danger because, people can only... And now we have all these issues with people, particularly when it comes to voting times and things like that, where, they're putting out stuff online and on different platforms which have got no guidance or no restrictions on whatsoever. And people believe it's true.
Welcome to this, another episode of my podcast, Pints of View. And today I'm with a lifelong Chelsea fan who's got some links to Southend that I didn't actually realise. So we've got to talk about that today, buddy. Royal Correspondent, author, and someone that you see on TV a lot with a lot of good comments. And I've got to say, everything you've said so far about everything about the family, I'm a big advocate for. And actually, yeah. And to be fair, this is unusual because generally it's the other way around. So that's kind of good. So can I welcome Rob Jobson, Pints of View. We are
Pints of View.
Half Pints of View to see it, and non-alcoholic. Because obviously reasons, I'm rattling 3 of these off a day. So, I have tried to welcome people with a poem.
Right.
I'm no poet laureate, that's for sure. So, but I'm a boy giving it a go. So be gentle with me.
I'm listening.
Right. Yeah. His weapon is his wit. Our football team is shit.
That is true. The second
we both still Chelsea. He's often seen on TV. He talks with refreshing honesty. He knows all the faces and all the royal places. He's a friend to the stars and many Chelsea bars. He's got lyrics. His voice is his gimmick. I brought him back from the Dubai Sun. For everybody, I give you Robert Jobson.
Very good.
That was
very good poem.
Yeah.
There's something there for you. A bit of rapping.
I don't know. Well, when they realise I regurgitate.
When someone dies, you can get the job. There's no doubt about it.
When someone dies. Brilliant. There's a whole thing about the balcony these days, but that's a really big plane crash.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, shall we just start from the beginning? Now, most people talk to you about all things royal, but we're not going to go there today, unless you mean to me. But a career in journalism is... Well, I don't even know what journalism is anymore because it seems to have changed so much. But you've made an absolutely epic career out of it. How should we do this? Should we talk about your journey to getting there? Shall we talk about the way that the industry is changing and, everyone's got a camera, everyone's a pap, everyone's got a blog, everyone does a podcast, right? And they think they've got an opinion that other people want. How do you carve out? Because you are the top of your game. Well, how do you do that?
I've been in Fleet Street 35 years, and I advise anybody who wants to get into journalism to walk down Fleet Street at the bottom of the famous street where all the newspapers used to be. There's a plaque dedicated to Edgar Wallace, and Edgar Wallace, for those who know him in another world, is the guy who wrote King Kong. But before that, he was a great writer, great journalist in Fleet Street before he went out to Hollywood. And basically, he said his heart belongs to Fleet Street. And I think that's really, you've got to have a big heart and want to be a reporter. I think that I find that a lot has changed over the years and not for the better. I think that journalism is essentially trying to get as close to the truth as you can, to hold accountable people who are in elected office, and to try, if you can, to make a difference. And I think that by getting to that truth, that's really all you can do. Obviously I think journalism was taking a bit of a kick in, and the trade, it's not a profession, it's a trade, has also been under fire for probably rightly over all that happened with Leveson. But I started out on local papers. I'd wanted to be a journalist ever since I was a kid. I'd seen all the President's Men. I think I'd seen it about 11, 12.
How old were you when you started?
When I actually got my first job in journalism, probably 21, 22. But I'd started doing, writing on the university newspaper, writing on the school papers, all that sort of stuff. But when I got my first job was when I left university. I couldn't get a job straight away. So I was selling space on a computer magazine, and I was earning good money doing that, actually. Serious money. It was the late 80s. And, I was turning over 50, 60, 70,000 quid, which was quite amazing. But I left it.
Were you on a staff payroll at that time, or you was freelance?
I was on a contract with a bonus, and so if you hit your sales bonus, you got a massive thing, which is why I got that sort of money.
Was it V&U?
No, it was I Sell Today. It was called. I don't even know if that exists. But anyway, then this job came up on the Yellow Advertiser, which was owned by Majetsky, the guy who ended up running Reading, and I took a job there. Then I got did all my training, but it was very, very poor money. Did all my training on the local papers. Went to Harlow. Did my 10-week journalist course there for the national training for the council journalists. That still exists. Kids still do it. There were there were no degrees in journalism and things like that. I did history and English, and that's the way I got into it. I think, then you were shifting at night. I worked for the local paper, the East Anglian Daily Times, but then would work at night for the Sun and Today newspaper, till eventually I got a job, worked in Scotland, came back down. And then in England, working in East Anglia, which was an area which I was familiar with, coming from Essex. And it was then that I got a call to come in and cover the Royals for the Sun. I had a history degree. I looked fairly smart, looked presentable. They said, yeah, you can do that job.
It's posh and gravelly.
So that's what happened. That's actually what happened.
Do you remember the first story?
First story, and this shows you where I think people should understand a bit more about the way some of the tabloids work. I literally sat down at my desk. A phone call came in to this desk. Are you the Royal Correspondent? Yes. There's been drugs found on Princess Anne's plane. They've all had to get off the plane, and she has had to get off as well. Bang, phone went dead. Didn't have a clue who it was. Didn't have a clue why they were phoning, but they weren't asking for money. There were no, nefarious things going on. Made a phone call to the palace. They said nothing, said security issue, phoned the airline and the airways, and then through police got a confirmation through guidance, Bush splash in the paper. So without knowing where the story come from, someone had rang in and done that. That happened a lot. We've got to remember this is pre Twitter, a lot of it. We didn't even have, I think we had the odd brick for a phone, but there was nothing really around. So really people were going to phone boxes and phoning the paper to give them tips, and they weren't looking at, not in every case, but in a lot of cases, they weren't looking for money. They were just passing on the information.
So stuff like that is still happening today?
Yeah, but they'll go in, people will tweet, or they'll send people private messages, or they'll check their emails and they'll email people information. That stuff has gone on since the days of Jack the Ripper, or before, when the people would bring up and tell the local newspaper there's something that happened here and we believe it could be this person or that person. So, they were printing letters of, fake letters by Jack the Ripper and things like this. So, that sort of interaction between public and press has been going on for a long time.
I just saw a link there. The Royal Correspondent Jack the Ripper. You don't think ...
No.
Okay, we are going to ask you what your favourite conspiracy theory is in a bit, and that could be it. So,
yeah. Well, that's right. With the royal family and linked to it, yeah.
With that stuff now, what's your opinion about all this fake news or the fake news about fake news?
Well, I think it's inevitable. I think. Well, this is the problem. I've covered war zones, and I've been, Sierra Leone and Afghan, Iraq, all these places where you've covered the stories. And truth, of course, is the first casualty of any situation like that, or inevitably, because the sides are taken. And that's always a bit of a worry if you're embedded, you can't write certain things. But I think that the most important thing is that what I think is dangerous is when the state can in any way really influence a story. And we've seen it time and time again recently with fake news. And if you look at, I'm not I'm not against Trump in any way, but I think his bullying tactics that he had with the media, and he would spread what I would think was a lot of just complete, nonsense. And that's a danger, because, people can only And now we have all these issues with people, particularly when it comes to voting times and things like that, where, they're putting out stuff online and on different platforms which have got no guidance or no restrictions on whatsoever. And people believe it's true. I mean, and I think there's a lot of doubting of the news. And you can understand that when it comes to the platforms that the stuff's out there on. But newspapers and news generally and online news platforms do their best to get it right, which is why I find the continual slagging off of newspapers and the news organisations pretty sad, because I think actually on the whole newspapers do it quite well.
So I've been on the other side of it.
Well, you did experience something that was completely wrong and made up.
And you get beaten up for stuff.
Yeah, that was wrong.
And shit stinks. But what kind of checks and balances are there these days?
Well,
because if you see something on Twitter...
Not a lot, frankly. I mean, that's the trouble. If you see something on Twitter and it's put out against you, or it's said in a place where they're protected, there's not a lot you can do about it, apart from try to get your point of view across. I think in your particular case, it was, it turned out to be complete baloney. You got tarred with it, and it was complete nonsense. It was, someone asking you a question, and you answering it, and saying, "Go down to the docks." It wasn't exactly what you were portrayed to be. So I hear what you say, but I think that things have improved, and I think quite radically over the last 10 years. Yeah.
I also think there's a reason why that you've been in the game so long. So 35 years on Fleet Street, black man and boy and old man again with love. But do you know what I mean? That's many careers in one.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think about the next gen?
I think that, my niece actually has just got a job as entertainment reporter on the Mail Online, and she's greatly enthusiastic. She just did a 3 years course with News Associates, which is a degree course that they do, training them to be. And when I see someone like that, with that level of enthusiasm, that level of desire, and the kids, I speak to them go and speak to them. A friend of mine runs the show there, and I'm enthused by their passion and their desire to try to make it a good trade, do the best they possibly can. But there's a whole industry around, of all these PR people and these people that are former journalists, or these people that are gurus, they're called, guiding the press. And essentially a lot of it is, I find it frustrating because there's a lot of disingenuous stuff going out there where they're not telling the complete truth. And therefore, as a result, the stories are getting twisted and turned all over the place.
I haven't said this story on before, but at one point I saw Max Clifford, because I just thought it was barrage of abuse. So I thought, well, maybe I should get someone on my side who could be a filter. His office was full of dolly birds, if you can say that. He was there. It was like a little fiefdom, and his advice was, "Why chuck some money at my charity, and let's say you've been doing that for ages, and that's what the narrative would be. What a great bloke you are." So I said, "So what your solution is? Tie me into a lie that I haven't done."
Well, Max is gone now, and I knew Max. And I think the reality with Max is that in his time, the Freddie Starr, my hamster, the times that were going on, that he was actually controlling a lot of this narrative, and making up stories that were pumping out particularly to the Sunday newspapers. Not great, not great stuff, but I think it was a different age and a different time. And I think that when we're dealing with, and I'll take a knock on it, I had Prince Harry saying that, he said, where does Rob Jobson get his stories from? Oh, his imagination. Nonsense. I didn't imagine that Charles was going to get married to Camilla. I didn't imagine that he was ending his army career. So, he's a bit bitter and twisted. And I think a lot of people in positions of very senior positions that should know better, actually, they're saying ridiculous things. But I genuinely think in your case, you were just caught in a
sting.
Well, it was a sting, but it was also in the whole of that, like a twister of news, looking for people just to, I don't think they particularly cared about who the victims were. They were just going for people, and yours was it was not right, and as simple as that.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, but I'm not so innocent. But
no, but it's not about innocence. But there wasn't, There wasn't quite it wasn't the story. The headline didn't match. The headline didn't match.
No, it didn't. And as you got quite a lot of column inches, and they did have.
Yeah, but a lot of people, as you said, I remember you telling me, and you're a cab driver, sort of say, "Oh, you must be this guy," and you go, "Well, not quite that. It's not quite as it was painted." But but newspapers do have a massive impact on people's lives, but it's up to the journalist. I think that there's a lot of young kids out there who are really trying to get into it, really want to make a difference with the online, which I think is going to be the future. I think papers are going to really exist in 30, 40 years. But there are a lot of great journalists out there, people that cover the war zones, people that I think really, bring problems to light. And hopefully that will continue.
And how do you get a lengthy career in this? It's not a job, is it? Is it a vocation? You say it's a trade?
I think that you've got to have a passion for it, and you also got to be quite versatile. Either be versatile in the way you cover the stories or specialise. I mean, I covered pretty much everything. I was assistant editor of the Express in the end, and then I covered mostly royals, but then I covered diplomatic stuff as well. And wars. And so, but I got to around about 40 and reached the stage where I had my son, and I'd reached the stage really where I didn't want to go down the executive way. So I wrote my first book, which was with Ken Wolfdine as protection officer, called Closely Guarded Secret. And that was enabled me to set up my own little company, which is what I've done. And so I basically then got contracts with different areas, and as a result, being an expert with the royalty side of things, I ended up getting contracts with American networks and Australia, which I've continued to be an on-screen presence there, as well as covering stories in the UK. So it's been fun, and without any real formal training on TV, I spend most of my time doing that now as a commentator.
Oh, I see you a lot. Yeah, you're omnipresent.
And I think really the most important thing to say to kids doing that is to be yourself and to tell the truth as you know it. Don't try and be something you're not, because you can't be.
So I just mentioned before we come upstairs about interviewing. So a lot of my friends are in recruitment. It's all about making sure you actually get to the truth behind the person or the work mask and you're doing work now with businesses and asking them questions. Have you got any advice for people in terms of getting to the truth of the matter, or getting to the story within the story?
Well, if you look at some of the great interviews, people, who are actually interviewing in media, like Michael Parkinson, who's a journalist, even he's superb, I think, in my opinion. But I think that there was a period where it was all this antagonistic interviewing, continually asking the same question over and over again to a politician,
or Sunday morning stuff.
And all that. And I used to think that was tedious, because all you used to get is shouting about. So I think the most important thing in any interview is to try to do your research, to warm to the person, to try and get them to warm to you, but also to try and find the person behind the story, because inevitably everyone's got a book in them, everyone's got a story in them that's quite interesting, how they rose to the position that they did, why they did it, and how they managed to reach there. And I think that if you give everybody a bit of time, they will come out with quite interesting stories about, either their family or I interviewed a guy yesterday, which blew me away. And he was, for a book that I'm doing, when these guys are getting their stories in there. He was born 3 months early. So he was I think it was even more than that, 4 months early or 3. It was one of the world, it was incredible that he did this. And he was then in the incubator, and for about, the period of time, and he had to go to hospital continually through his life. He became this Harvard scientist whose work has been behind getting all this research into stem cells and cells, and how we could get the drugs effectively into our cells to make sure that the lives can be saved. And his work it was used in all these COVID drugs. Essentially saved like 16 million, 17 million lives. So this little guy that would have probably died if they'd have just been said, "Oh, there's no point." But the mother fought so hard for him to live, that his entire life, he said, was about trying to help other people. Yes, he made money out of it and made a lot of money producing drugs that have saved people's lives, but he was driven by that. And I just thought, imagine the nurses and the doctors that first saw it would have thought, if we hadn't saved that little kid, what wouldn't happen? So there are stories, or even stories of people that left school at like 12 or something, or 13, just ended up making millions of pounds, and things like that. I just find those sort of stories fascinating.
So, what do you think about degrees these days? So I've a daughter who's just, hopefully we're going up to celebrate her first. But 2-1's okay. I've been drilled. So she just finished her psychology.
It is. I got it. It is.
But lots of my friends have got Desmond's. So sports. So they've she's got her degree. But I'd always said to her, I don't really want you just to go to uni, just to have those years. I want it's got to be vocational. Do you think degrees add value these days? Should we really? Because you can get a degree in hairdressing.
Well, right? I think that, I'm not a great believer, as I said, in journalism degrees, although I must say that, and because I think that we're a trade and journalists, that's what they are. But I understand that this is the way it's gone, and so they've made them work. My son's doing Russian, and he's got to go back to do his last year. And he just spent a year in Georgia and a year, and then Lithuania and Latvia, because you couldn't get into Russia, so he's had to learn that. So I think that if there's a skill that comes out of it, I think it's worth it. I don't see why, if it's hairdressing or cinema, I don't see why that can't be an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with it being an apprenticeship, because some of the great, people have been apprentices.
They're coming back.
And they used to happen a lot, and it's happening with journalism now. There's more apprentices. A lot of people used to join as runners, or kids at 18 and 16 into journalism. And I think that shouldn't be seen as a lesser route in, because by the time you've got to remember that in years gone by, editors of the Express, I think there was one who was 23 years old, but he'd been in the business, for 8-9 years, because he'd left school and trained. So I think that we've got to, if we're going to go back that way, then we've got to get it out of people's mindsets that it's a lesser way, a lesser route.
And it's 100% not, is it?
100% not, because, you look at some of the people that have made great careers, and they come from, quite humble backgrounds, have not had a great education, but have done it in a route that shows their passion and drive.
I know. Do you know, my mum was really premature when she was born. Is that a lie? Am I getting a lie? I'll get a lie detector. No, my mother was born, and she was 2 pounds.
Yeah, well, just, the drive. I think that maybe there's a bigger drive for life when you realise that within a second or so you could have passed away,
Yeah, no, I totally think that. Is there anything that I've missed?
Some funny things. The royal side of things. I started I was up in Scotland, actually, and I started covering everything up there. I remember, there was some fun and games there. I think there was one story I covered, a court case I'd never heard. The legal system up there was, over here it's guilty or not guilty. In Scotland, it's guilty and not guilty and not proven. And I didn't even know this. I went to cover the court case, and this guy came out with this, very pronounced Glaswegian, not proven. And I thought, what the hell does that mean? But, basically it means that, you got this sort of black spot on your head, but you can walk free. But I remember there's a couple of stories that used to come out of there, were always quite fun, and had a good time up in Scotland. But one of them was I was sent to Balmoral to cover, because Diana and the 2 little boys were there. They were little then, the princes. And I was just sent there because the photographers were all around. And so I stayed at a place called the Craig and Darrock. I was in the Craig and Darrock and having a swim. The photographers were outside. And the next thing I saw the wall at the window. And then I saw these shiny shoes coming, which were clearly the protection officers. And then Diana came in with the 2 boys. So I thought, I'll go and disappear. So I went and disappeared into the sauna, thinking, at least I can be out of the way. I don't want to be rumbled here. This is something I didn't even know she was coming in. Next thing I know, she appears in the sauna. It was just me and her, with a towel wrapped around her head and a towel wrapped around her bit and her body. And I didn't say who I was or anything until a year later, or a year and a half later, I was in Pakistan. I was made Royal Correspondent, and she came up to me and she said, "Oh, we haven't met." I said, "We have met, man. We were in the sauna, but you look different with your your clothes on. So she thought that was quite funny. So we got off to Flying Start. And she was a great lady to cover the stories that, it's easy when you look back. A lot of people think I've sort of categorized her, but she was a lot of fun. I always used to come and chat when we were at the receptions and things like that. And although it was a tricky time, the so-called War of the Worlds, she was a great character, someone that you look back and he's now a person in history, but you were actually there when it was happening. Yeah.
Who's your favourite royal?
Oh, I think the Princess of Wales. No. I was going to say that was my favourite. Oh, I think the King. God save the King. Yeah.
I've got to say, obviously the fan, but I have a massive, massive, massive love for the Princess Royal.
Oh, she's a great lady.
I'm really funny.
Yeah.
And
the Duke of Edinburgh was mine before. I mean, he's not here now, bless him, but he was president of the In and Out Club. I remember I used to have a lunch there, and I remember then, been a member 15 years or something, and there was one lunch, well, more than that, 20 odd years, and he spotted me in the lineup for the lunch. He said, "What on earth are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I can go if you want to." He goes, "No, you might as well stay and eat, not that you need to," which was fair dues. But he was always quite, he's a good, I just think, I used to make me laugh. I couldn't help, when he made some of his remarks.
So wrong, it's right.
It's so wrong, it's right. And also, at the end of the day, when you get into his 90s, that when he was making some of these comments, if you can't say what you think, then when can you say it?
100%, 100%. There's something I do want to cover with you before we get into some fun and games.
Yeah, go on.
Southend.
Yeah.
So tell us about the link with Southend, because
I'm from Southend. My dad was a chairman there for 25 years when I was at university and onwards. And Bobby Moore was the manager. Was the first manager. He was there and made him director of football in the end, I think. And he was there. He died as director of football. But my dad was there we reached the highest position in the football league. We were in what is the championship now. We reached the top of that for a few weeks before it went down again. We had Stan Collymore that was probably our best buy ever, But yeah, it was good times. We had some good times. I played in the reserves many years before, and they went to Basildon. But Dad, enjoyed it. But then he became quite ill and sold it to a guy that's now trying to sell it again.
But it's mad, the money in football these days. I mean, as both of us, just Chelsea fans, £1 million for Frank, or Haaland is getting £1 million a week now. I mean, what?
Well, this is it. I mean, my grandfather played for Arsenal 6 times, I think it was, or 7 times, and then he went to Ipswich, and he was still a painter and decorator, when they still had the same crowd. So if they had bigger crowds, someone was still got one of the money. But the football money is now to do with the TV and the TV money. But you wonder when people don't even say very much, and they blink about a £60 million player. I mean, it's a fortune. And
it is a lot
of
money.
The money that's just been spent at Chelsea, you just think, well...
Without a striker?
Without a result. Without a striker, but without all this money. You think, well, how can this be? But of course, it's to do with, merchandising, marketing, everything. I mean, I can't even imagine it's to do with ticket sales because that can barely cover the service.
I know. It's too small a ground as well.
Yeah.
A huge thank you for all of the support from Corporate Peaks. Now, if you want to maximize how you incentivize, you have to phone these people. Business-related events, lunches, conferences, and fun trips. From snow and black runs to tequilas and after sun, they just do it better.
So, we've spent no money, and this is James. You're going to spin this,
right,
and then it's going to land on something, and we're going to prompt. Give it a good spin. You don't get this on daytime TV, mate. D. Right. So we can now talk about something. I've got prompts, or you might have. Look, I've got a book of prompts.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what the prompts are, or you can sit there and talk about stuff. We should have saved the Diana story.
That's plenty of that.
Dads and daughters, and data and drivers and dashboards. I mean, you don't want to do that. That's for other business people. Or Nike, just do it, right? So in terms of mantras, or a D that you've got. But I think it's unfair of us not to talk about Diana, maybe.
Yeah, it probably is. I think Diana probably was the given that I wrote a book that went all around the world, Diana Cressy got a secret. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I found her an amazing woman. She was difficult, but she could turn. I remember I was being on a trip to Australia, and she was down there, and everyone had gone with the Queen to Thailand, and I'd had a chat with quite a senior figure at the Foreign Office who had said that she shouldn't have clashed with the Queen, and she was the thorn in the Queen's side, and it was quite a senior person. So I wrote this story in the Sunday Express and then flew down thinking nothing of it and arrived in Sydney, where she was at an event for raising a charity event. She spotted, after dancing around, I don't think she was very happy. She was crowded by a lot of people. She spotted me, came steaming over and said, "You got it wrong," or something like that. So I said, "Well, a Foreign Office briefing is a Foreign Office briefing, ma'am. The story was what I believe to be the truth." And then she stormed out. And I spoke to someone afterwards who said, basically, you hit the nail. If she was doing that, she hit the nail. You'd hit the nail smack on the head. So, yeah, she could be difficult, but most of the time she was great fun.
It was a love-hate relationship with the press.
Yeah, I think that she had a terrible time with the press, and I think that
that's good of you to say that.
Well, I think it was particularly, when it came to being chased by the paparazzi. I think that was unacceptable. It's unacceptable, but in those days, I don't think people quite understand that they could make a lot of money. In these days, they can't make the same, anywhere near the money that they used to make. But Diana did generate, a lot of money for these guys, and I think that if you look at what happened in the crash with the foreign paparazzi, although the driver was ultimately at fault because he'd been drinking, they definitely added to the cocktail of disaster that led to a death. But ultimately, if she'd had a seatbelt on and had a protection from Scotland Yard, she would be alive today. But it's a tragedy that happened, and I hope that people, I do believe things have changed. I do believe it has changed.
And when you're doing royal stories such as that, and if there's something that's tricky that you have to making comment about Harry or just dancing around some of the topics that are going around, is there any control? Because I'm always interested to know how governed you.
No, not really. I mean, I've written 14 books. I mean, I've written just written a book called Our King, about the King, and I've spoken to him one-to-one, and I've covered the story for such a long time that really is my judgment. But of course, in the back of your mind, you do think you still want to carry on working. You don't want to, but equally, if you know the story is right and your sources are verifiable in terms of you're totally confident that they are, then you should run the stories.
And hasn't he done well?
The King, yeah, superb. I mean, I thought that he was, I started off the book Our King about the moment that, just before Her Majesty died, he had gone off into the woods at Burke Hall, and he was mushroom picking and just trying to get his thoughts together. And people say, well, why did you do that? I said, because that shows you the type of person he is. He wanted to be alone. He wanted to sort of be at one with nature, because he knew he was on the cusp of what really was his destiny. And, I think that he really deeply cares about people. He really deeply cares about the crown and the country, but, and young people. And I think that he knows that young people are the future, and he's invested a lot of time in that. Unfortunately, with the Harry and Meghan situation that's sort of clouded everything that's gone around him, it's sad, because I think that, this is his time. And I think that really that it's time for Harry and Meghan to get in line, frankly, and just to show him the respect he deserves.
I do liken Harry at the moment to being the Kevin and Perry of the royal family. I don't want to be a hate everyone. Well,
as long as we know that, a lot of money has passed Harry. He has been given a lot of money by his father. I think that when people ask me about it, I just say, look, anyone who's just a dad knows that it's very difficult. You fall out with your kids, but it's very difficult. You can never stop loving them, and you've got to try to, you want to make sure that they're okay. Maybe, just maybe, he's just making sure the door's left ajar slightly. So if there's any issues, then there's always a way back.
I think he's certainly got more patience than me.
It's main sponsor time. So a massive shout out to Kingsbridge Insurance Group and specifically Elements. This truly unique and brilliant one place, one solution, staffing and compliance reliance tool is making a massive difference. It's a way to reduce your business op costs and fund some very questionable and random life choices. Our CEOs are all using it for a reason. You should too.
Right, so.
That sounds nice.
It is, isn't it? Maluma. The idea is this is nothing to do with being on a desert island because none of the questions make sense to it now. But it's one choice. So if you had one of something,
okay,
it was the only thing that we could shoehorn into being a sound effects. So I went with it.
I quite liked it.
Yeah, it was quite. So if you had one wish, speed fire round.
One wish that my father was still here.
Yes, you got it right. Right, because somebody would be saying some random things. One prediction.
Chelsea win the league within 5 years.
Why so long? Half a decade?
Oh.
Well,
because this Man City, they've got to be found guilty yet, haven't they?
Well, would you reckon?
I think Chelsea win the league within 5 years.
Okay, right. You won't be held out in Manchester. Best moment in time you've ever had?
I don't know. The best moment, birth of my son.
You're playing this safe. Okay, can't
it is. It's the truth.
Oh, right, okay, right. You have to have a tattoo now. There's someone coming in. What is it?
It's one of those big sort of Tongan things on the shoulder.
Really?
Yeah, I think I'd go for that because
you're going all out.
The sunrise. When I do stuff for Australia, that for a period they used to say that there was a guy that used to say I was the king of Tonga. So I think I'd go for the full sort of Fijian or Tongan.
Right. If you do it, I'll pay.
I'm not going to do it though, mate.
Okay.
Yeah, the one of them.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
slightly not as deep as that, but that if I'm going to do.
Oh, hang on, my son
has got several which his mother hates that he went away. He went away when he was in Georgia. He had some gecko put on. Then he went to Lithuania, had the Lithuanian bird put on. I said, "What are you? Some collection of a zoo?"
So the Johnny Morris.
What are you doing? Yeah, we're doing a giraffe flex.
That is so random. Context, shall I show you this? Right, I've got a lot of tattoos. The only one I regret is that. So it's supposed to.
That's one that Charlie's got one with the heart with the dagger in it, and he deeply regrets.
Right.
it.
So it's the idea is it's like the time tunnel version of a heart. So there's forever love. But I was on the beach.
How old were you?
I was too old. I was on the beach in the Seychelles, and the general manager walked past and said, "What have you fucking come as? A Care Bear?" And I've never lived it down and hated it ever since.
The Charles wanted a tattoo.
Did he?
Yeah, he wanted to have an eagle on his back when he was in the Royal Navy, but he was not allowed to have one.
No shit.
A big eagle as well.
Yeah, but that's a bit American, isn't it? Big unicorn. One guilty pleasure.
God, they're difficult, aren't they? Guilty pleasure. I don't know.
But they weren't difficult if you read them beforehand.
No, I know. But I don't. I always just, I went through it. But you'll come back to that one.
Right. One do-over. So something in your life
one
that
do-over.
It's my American slang, man. So one thing that you wish you could have done differently, you can go back and do it again.
Not married so many times.
Well, to be fair, I've been married 4. How many times?
I think it's at least 3.
Yeah. So we love a bit of cake.
I love buying diamonds.
Or buy people you don't like very much houses. I love all my exes. I love you all, except for one.
I love you all, yeah. I wish you well.
Right, one sporting victory that you wish you had had.
Sporting victory?
Yeah, so.
I wish I'd seen would be the World Cup 66.
I said that.
I wish I'd had just scoring a goal at Wembley, but I have actually done that in a charity match.
Sorry, can someone pick that mic up? Unbelievable.
I've scored a goal at Wembley, and it was John Motson described me as a good little player, so it was a while back. And I netted, and it's on film. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Just get it over. That's probably the greatest moment of my life, apart from the birth of my son.
Really?
Scoring at the old Wembley, yeah.
Were there many people there?
Doesn't matter, it's on film. It was on the same, and Kenny Dalglish, when he found out that we played on there. It was it was a big competition of all the journalists. Littlewoods put it on. And he said it was an absolute fucking disgrace that we were out on the pitch.
Oh, that's horrific. One person you wish you could have met or could meet?
Churchill.
I love Churchill as well. So he really likes Churchill, doesn't he? And to be fair, when he was in
power... But you never know if he does or not, because he's probably lying.
I think he's been treated unfairly about Partygate. Do you know what?
Well, he wasn't really partying, was he? Everyone else was.
I just think he's like to be in it.
But the thing is, he nearly died of COVID. It was a very difficult time. I think people feel, I like everybody, I know a lot of people did stick by the rules.
Yeah.
Collected their PAY checks, AE checks, and stayed at home. And it was a hot summer, and I do remember there being the smell of barbecue in the air.
What, round the back of your house?
Well, everywhere. It seems to me that a lot of people were, not necessarily mixing, but passing drinks over the fence.
You are the right the person to ask this question. One food type or stuff you have to eat for the rest of your life.
Fish. And with the chips that go with it.
Right. Mine used to be curry, but not after last night. I like
curry, but it's the worst thing I can even possibly eat. Every time I eat it, I'm all excited, and then I walk away, I just feel terrible. So
literally, I've only just stopped shaking.
Yeah.
So it's
not good. It's a great anticipation, curry.
Right, one luxury item that you can't live without.
Have I got any luxury items? My luxury item would be my big television, so that when I'm watching the weekend's football, I can sit there and I'm just in heaven, really, to be honest. I hate when the football season's off. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing.
I know. It's a real
weekend.
It's a big gap.
And racing driving, not really.
Well, I don't mind it, but not when there's not a Brit doing really well. It becomes boring watching them.
Watching Ashes. But no, it's football. I think the big screen and just,
watching the football. Right, and one mantra that you live by.
Do the best you can. Be the best you can.
Hang on, didn't someone say that this morning? Yeah. And that was...
I think my father used to say that to me, you can't win everything, but do the best you can. But he used to say, I remember once when I was running in a cross-country race, I was about 12 or something, I came home, it was for the south of England, I thought I'd done really well, came in second, and I remember coming home and Mum was really delighted, spoke to my dad, he went, there's no point coming second in life.
What'd you get for second?
That's basically what he said. She said, well, what'd you get for that? There's no point. There is no point coming second. And I'd say that I can understand for that. I mean, it sort of drove me on, I suppose. But if I was saying I would say, do the best you can.
To be fair, mine's...
be the best you can.
I love to be owed a favour, not a fiver. So if you do enough favours for people...
Don Corleone.
Yeah. Well...
You remember that thing I need 2 tickets for Wembley.
Yeah, all that stuff. I'll phone you up. That's why I'm getting people like yourself. I'm pulling in favours here.
For when Chelsea get to the next final in 5 years' time. Yeah.
In 5 years' time.
Huge thank you to RDLC for chipping in and supporting me on this private adventure. It is the only place to be. There are other recruitment networks, but frankly, they're shit. Always work with the RDLC. It's a better place to be. Hang out with 300 recruitment CEOs is the board you can't afford. Peace.
Oh, right. So we're going back in time. I think you were going to say keep up the sport. But if you could now go back in time and speak to your 18-year-old self, your words to you, what advice would you say to you?
I would say stay single a lot longer than you did, and make sure that you are tighter with your money than you have been. Be a little tighter. Be a little more careful with your money.
You and me both. Yeah, it's not there to get rid of as quickly as possible. It's there to look after you.
My grandmother used to say to me, it's a blink of an eye. And I'd be thinking, what's he going on about? She was born in 1901. She doesn't know anything. Lived to about 90. She said, if you can't be good, be careful, to me, which I always think was a good mantra. But but she said you'll be old in a blink of an eye. And she's true. She's got it right. It is.
I know. I always advise people now, if you get paid bonuses or commissions, if you possibly can, put half of it away. Because
or buy something that you solid and keep it, invest in watches or do something.
Well, Rolexes.
Yeah.
It's just a Rolex. What are you wearing today?
The Rolex.
Nice.
Yeah.
In London. It's so naughty around here at the moment.
Yeah, well, I would say it's within the insurance bracket. They can have it.
All right, so we could get City Council out of London.
A massive thank you and shout out to Target Recruits, the #1 Salesforce-based recruitment-centric CRM. Now, they are the ultimate single moment of truth for aspirational business leaders in recruitment. If you're not aspirational, I wouldn't bother.
So, Robert, we have an opportunity to ask you some killer, really mean questions.
Yeah.
Just do some fillers just in case any of that was boring. It wasn't boring. It was very good, thank you. But thank you for doing this. Right, so we're going to start with a nice little warm-up question. Which was your favourite wife? Oh, should we do it the other way around? Which was the wife you hate the most?
Oh God, I'm not going to go there.
Yeah, I know you are. It's in the contract. No, don't. It's all right.
I can't. That'll be the end of me.
I just think you said, right. So the other.
There is one. There are.
Oh, you know. Yes. And
What was the last question?
or which was the worst wife? It's that Irish bomb disposal going in.
I certainly love the
Parties.
the mother of my son very much. Yeah.
Okay.
She was a great, and still is a great lady. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Beautifully navigated. All right, let's start another easy one. Which is your favourite child?
I've only got one, Charlie.
Do you remember when all that shit hit the fan about me? Do you know what they called me in Australia? Uncle Charlie. Still then, that was what really, I did make me.
My son is Charlie Boy. Yeah,
that's
Charles.
brilliant. Right, so we got,
That was easy, that one.
well, yeah, 1 to 10.
1 to
Pick
10.
a number, any number.
9.
Brilliant. Dirty food sin.
Dirty food.
You know that. So I'm prawn sandwich when I go to football, but I do not love one of those dirty burgers.
Oh yeah, I mean that is like a burger, but I like a sausage roll, but then the sausage rolls can vary from being fantastic to being utterly disgusting, can't they?
Yeah.
Particularly at football.
Yeah.
And so I like a sausage roll, but then when you bite into it, it's not quite the same as what you're hoping for.
And I never eat a sausage roll in the car because it never comes out, and you just look like you got the worst dandruff in the world. Right. Say number 8.
Number 8.
Okay, I'm glad you chose that one. The best pub food fact. Sorry, number 8. The best pub quiz fact.
It's ages since I've done a pub quiz, but I would say there was one that the better. Well, I've got to come up with the fact.
No, tell me a fact that you love the most. A random fact or a question.
But the question, I mean, I like the one. I love history questions, so I like the one. Who was the Queen for 9 days? I like things like that. Henry VIII stuff I quite like. So let me think. I don't know really.
Oh, okay, I'll give you another one then. Who was the best monarch of history and can't include Queen Elizabeth II?
You can't include her.
No, because it would be a...
I would say, in terms of, I would say Henry V.
Can't really dig Elizabeth I.
Yeah, but she's cool.
She
Yeah,
mixed it up.
the body of a weak and feeble. I may have the body of a weak and feeble woman with the heart of a king, and a king of England said at Tilbury Docks. Yeah, I agree. But then again, we have a vision of her that's been created more by Hollywood than by fact.
Exactly. Right, another number.
7.
What is your biggest fear and why? Divorce lawyers.
Biggest fear. I think my divorce lawyers. Just about a croak and you can't get to the phone. I think that'd probably be my biggest fear, actually.
Oh, and who would the phone call be to?
It doesn't matter, but just to sort of just let someone know that I'm just about to cry.
999?
That would be, if I could get 999 in, it'd be quite good. Yeah. I mean, for Christ's sake.
That's brilliant.
Or the worst fear actually was come up with that recently, didn't it? Was that you're actually in the coffin or something, and then you suddenly wake up. That's probably the worst thing. You can't get out. There was someone got discovered literally the other day, and they by the family they had one of these wakes, and there was an open coffin, and some
got out.
And they realised that she was breathing, and she'd been certified. They'd been dead about 3 days. So
she must be starving.
But no, I don't know what happened at the end. But can you imagine?
Yeah, no, that's that.
That's pretty bad fear, I think. Yeah.
That's a really bad fear. Oh, are we wrapping up? Right. So, I'm going to let you have the last word, by the way, but just can I say, Robert, it's been an absolute delight. You're very engaging. You should do this shit for TV. You'd be really good at it.
I did say that we should do it. Yeah.
So I know you've got other things to do, but you still managed to squeeze that time in. So I must have done something right when we met you. I hope you have a great rest of the year. I hope Chelsea do something special so I can flag you.
Well, hopefully we'll see that they will do better this year.
And I think your honesty is really, really refreshing. And thank you for being kind to me today. So thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
Last word, sir. Anything you want to say?
Well, actually, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say there was a lot written about you that was complete and utter bollocks, and I just think it's right that it should be put on the record. You know that you're a good guy. You've been a very, very successful guy too. And I think that the way you were sort of pilloried in the media was totally unacceptable. And I hope that it hasn't impacted too much on you, because I think in certain instances, the media get it right 75% of the time, 80, 90% of the time. Your instance, they didn't. And I think it should have been sorted out.
He's still in Nick, by the way, isn't he? Isn't it? So, yeah, good. That was very kind of you, sir.
Cheers.
Thank
Take
you
care,
very
mate.
much.
No worries.